Hey guys, we're back with some more whitetail content, and in today's video we're going to be going over trail cameras. And in this video it's going to be kind of more geared towards a first-time user, someone who hasn't had a lot of experience with trail cameras, and 5 tips on really what you need to make sure you're doing when placing your camera for the first time. If you guys are new to this channel and you like what you see, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. So these tips are in absolutely no particular order. They are all very important, so we're just going to kind of go through them. The first one that we're going to talk about, I don't know if you can see this camera right here, it's well over my head. And so the first tip we have is to place your camera high. Now I know high is kind of a relative term, but it kind of really just boils down to your preference. I'm 6'2", so this is placed at about 6.5 feet. I found that works very well. And the reason that we're doing this is to try to reduce the chance that the animal that we're trying to target, with our photograph, that reduce the chance that they're going to know that they're having their picture taken. Because if they know they're having their picture taken, they're going to be a lot more nervous coming through this area, or they might not come through here at all. So we want to have everything as natural as possible, because we want to be able to pattern this animal. For me particular, I'm trying to pattern this animal to hunt this animal. So I want to make sure that they don't know that they're being hunted. They don't know that I'm trying to pattern them. So I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make sure that they don't know what's going on. The second thing that we like to do when we're placing our camera is we want to remove any debris that's right in front of the camera. So we used to have a lot of saplings right here, and we had a little bit of multiflora rose, and I cut that down a little bit so it's not really in the line of sight of the camera. And the reason that we're doing this is not necessarily to block the camera's view. You definitely want to make sure you have a clear picture of whatever you're trying to capture, but when you have these saplings and these bushes or these branches that will move a lot in the wind, that will trip the motion sensor on the camera and it'll take a picture. And so just to reduce a lot of the blank images that you're going to get on your camera, you want to try to remove a lot of the debris that's going to be caught in the wind and potentially set off the camera. I know that I want my camera to be running all the time, and every time it takes a picture, it takes up my memory card and it uses my battery. So if it's the hunting season and I only have a limited number of pictures and a limited amount of battery life on this camera, I want to make sure it takes as many pictures of wildlife as possible before it runs out of batteries or before that memory card fills up. And I don't want to be coming back to this location, once a week to change the batteries. And so one way to make sure that doesn't happen is to remove the debris in front of the camera. So the third tip that we have is kind of along the same lines of making sure that that camera isn't taking pictures when you don't want it to. And another way to do that is to make sure the camera is always facing in some direction of north. To put this in a hunting perspective, we hunt whitetails in the fall, and in the fall the sun is much lower in the sky towards the south, which is another reason why for food plots you always want to make sure that you have all the trees down on the south side so your food plot gets a lot of light. Well, if you're pointing your camera to the south and that sunlight's coming in and it hits your camera, let's say it comes from behind a tree, it comes from behind a cloud, that's going to set off the sensor on your camera and it's going to take pictures, just like a bush blowing in the wind would set off your camera. So again, if you don't want to have a lot of blank images, try to make sure you're not pointing the camera where you know the sun is going to be. So if you point the camera north, the chances of that you're going to have blank images due to the sunlight are greatly reduced. So the fourth tip that we have relates to how you should be placing your camera as it relates to the game trail or whatever it is you're trying to shoot. And I know you can't see it because it's below the camera, but there is a deer trail right now that is running like this. And when we set our camera, we don't want to set the camera to point straight at the trail. Like, we don't want to shoot perpendicular to the trail, because what we're doing then is we're just going to be capturing a small window into that trail. We would rather angle the camera and shoot more down the trail. I'm not saying you put it directly on the trail and shoot down, but you want to take it off the trail and slightly shoot down the trail, because what you're going to do then is you're going to capture more movement coming up and down the trail. So if you have a deer that's walking towards you, it's going to set off the camera, and if you have the camera set on like a burst mode, it'll start taking pictures and you'll get more chances, as opposed to if you have the camera looking straight at the trail, because then the animal will set off the camera, and by the time the camera takes the picture, the animal could already be past and you might get a picture of his butt. You know, you don't want that. So if you have it angled down the trail, you have a lot greater chance of actually getting a picture of the animal that you're trying to photograph. And this is especially important for those of you guys that have your camera set to video, because that video is going to start recording, you know, as soon as the motion sensor is tripped. But you don't want to have just the tail end of the movement. You want to capture the entire movement. So you need to angle your camera down the trail to get as much of that window as possible. You don't want a narrow window, you want the big picture. And that brings us to our last tip. And that's, if you can help it, if you have a tree available, try your hardest to keep your camera in between the area that you're trying to photograph and where you're coming from. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have a ladder stand about 20 yards behind me. So why that's so important is because when I come in from that direction, I can come and check this camera, and I never have to cross this deer trail and let the deer know that I was there. So I'll throw in a bonus tip here. If you guys are struggling to get any deer on your camera and you follow those 5 steps, one thing that you can do to increase the pictures on your camera is to put some sort of an attractant out to kind of lure the deer to the area or to get them to stop in front of your camera. Now this could mean several different things depending on where you are. If you're in a state that is allowed to bait or to place out minerals, that's an option. Here in Michigan, baiting is illegal, so we can't put out mineral sites or anything like that. But where I like to place my cameras is on mock scrapes. Mock scrapes are social hotspots for whitetails, and so if you can find a heavy deer trail or maybe a spot where 2 trails come together, place a mock scrape, hang your camera, that's going to be an awesome spot to check. And if you guys are not sure what a mock scrape is or how to make one, we do have a few videos on how we put those together and when we put them out. So definitely check those out. So just to see if any of these tips actually work, we actually just created this deer trail this past weekend, hung that mock scrape and hung the camera all in the same day. So let's check the card and see if we have any pictures. So that pretty much covers it for the 5 tips on trail cameras for beginners. There's really a lot to trail cameras. That was really kind of a basic introduction to them on what to do. If you guys want like a more advanced approach, let us know. We can make a video on that as well. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, drop them in the comment section below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.